Morning, and the subcommittee will come to order. First, I'd like to welcome Ranking Member Ossoff and congratulate him on the birth of his second daughter, Lila. I've got 3 daughters, lots of drama at my house. I look forward to working with you on the subcommittee, and again, we just want to welcome you. We meet today to discuss the President's fiscal year 2026 budget request for military construction and family housing for the Department of Defense. I would like to begin by recognizing today's panel. Today we'll hear from representatives of the military services as well as the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Joining us are the Honorable Dale Marks, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Energy, Installations, and Environment, Lieutenant General David Wilson, Army Deputy of Chief of Staff, G9, Vice Admiral Jeffrey Jablon, Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Installations and Logistics, Lieutenant General Stephen Skilenka, Deputy Commandant for Installations and Logistics, Lieutenant General Tom Miller, Air Force Deputy Chief of Staff for Logistics, Engineering, and Force Protection, who is approaching retirement after 34 years of service. General, thank you so much for your many years of service, and we certainly wish you well in your retirement. I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you someplace, but again, we do appreciate you very, very much. Brigadier General Zachary Warkomsky, Space Force Assistant Deputy Chief of Space Operations for Operations, Cyber, and Nuclear. This year's MILCON's request is $18.9 billion, a figure we only recently received due to significant delays in the delivery of the budget to Congress. We on the subcommittee look forward to receiving the justification books and related exhibits, which still have not been delivered but are expected later this month. From the data currently available, we know this request is an increase of $1.4 billion over the fiscal year 2025 enacted levels. While I'm encouraged to see another year of growth in the MILCON request, I remain concerned that we're not necessarily buying more, we're simply paying more. Some of these budget numbers are staggering. Not that long ago, hitting the $100 million mark on a single project was significant. Now it has become routine. Increments, once the exception, are increasingly the norm, accounting for nearly $6 billion in this year's request. That's more than 40 projects so costly they require incremental funding over multiple years. That may seem normal now, but this was not always the case. Multi-billion dollar recapitalization efforts combined with the increasing complexity of facilities needed to support today's weapon systems are resulting in larger and more complex projects. At the same time, inflation and other economic pressures continue to escalate cost. This trajectory is not sustainable, and future budget requests cannot continue absorbing these rising costs. To that end, I'm encouraged by the conversations taking place within the department that are examining the full range of factors, policies, procedures, regulations, and laws that affect MILCON and its associated cost. Some of these are established by Congress, others stem from DoD policy, and some may be self-imposed. As such, the effort required to drive meaningful changes will vary. But I'm hopeful that these discussions will lead to thoughtful analysis, honest dialogue, and ultimately real improvements in the efficiency of the MILCON process. Some of this will require close collaboration between Congress and the department, and I'm committed to being a partner in that effort. There will always be factors beyond your control, which makes managing the areas you control all the more critical. The recent injunction reinstating project labor agreement requirements is a clear example of how external influences can introduce uncertainty and added cost into the MILCON process, costs that are especially difficult to anticipate given how long the current planning, programming, and budgeting cycles take. I hope one outcome of the ongoing review directed by the Deputy Secretary of Defense is a faster timeline from project inception to final delivery. As a critical force enabler, MILCON supports everything from infrastructure tied to new weapons platforms to quality of life facilities like hospitals, schools, and housings. We owe it to the service members, the taxpayer, to deliver timely, high-quality facilities on schedule within budget, and I hope that future budget requests reflect efficiencies that lower the cost of individual projects. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today and continuing the dialogue and work needed for a successful MilCon program. Before we turn to our witnesses, I would like to recognize my colleague, Senator Ossoff, for his opening remarks.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Chairman Bozeman. Thank you for your partnership. I look forward to the important bipartisan work we'll do together leading this subcommittee. I also want to thank you for your kind words celebrating Lila's arrival, and I'm pleased to report, Mr. Chairman, that baby and mother are both healthy. So thank you for the well wishes. To our witnesses, thank you for being here. Thank you for your service to the nation. I do want to note that in General Sklinka and General Warkomsky, we have two Georgians on the panel from Marietta and Snellville, so we're proud of you and your work. And it's great to be here at my first MilCon VA hearing as the subcommittee's ranking member to review the fiscal year 2026 budget request for military construction and family housing. The military construction budget is essential to our national security, to the capabilities and resilience of military installations across the country and around the world, and to quality of life for service members and military families. Georgia, of course, is home to 13 defense installations, vital to our national security and home to some of the nation's most important missions and capabilities, including key Air Force missions at Robins Air Force Base in Warner Robins and Moody Air Force Base in Valdosta, the Maneuver Center of Excellence at Fort Benning outside of Columbus, Naval Submarine Base Kings Bay on Georgia's coast, Fort Stewart, home of the 3rd ID, Fort Gordon, home of the Army Signal Corps and the Cyber Center of Excellence, where they also host a vital NSA facility, Hunter Army Airfield, which hosts elite U.S. Army Ranger and aviation elements, the Marine Corps Logistics Base in Albany, Combat Readiness Training Center in Savannah, and more. And through this subcommittee, I'll continue my work alongside Chairman Bozeman and members on both sides of the aisle to ensure that installations in Georgia, across the continental United States, and around the world are resourced to defend our nation and to deliver the safety, security, health, and quality of life deserved by our service members and their families. For too long, Congress and the Department have under-resourced facilities like child development centers, Department of Defense schools, family housing, and barracks, plundering the accounts that support military quality of life in order to fund other priorities. And this persistent neglect of military quality of life does a disservice to those who serve and to their families. It's also a national security issue. If service members can't live, eat, train, and work in safe, healthy, world-class facilities, our readiness is undermined, and so is morale. And the Department's failure to provide military families, especially junior enlisted personnel, with the health, safety, and quality of life they deserve undermines recruiting and retention of talented young people to defend the United States. I'm pleased that this year's military construction budget request includes nearly $500 million for 5 important Georgia projects in fiscal year 26. These are projects I've championed for years, from a new elementary school at Fort Benning to the Trident facility at Kings Bay, and their inclusion in this request demonstrates the critical contributions of Georgia's installations, missions, and units to America's national defense, and I'll continue working through this subcommittee to see them through. In total, this year's budget requests $18.9 billion for MilCon, a $1.4 billion increase over the current year-long CR. We know that MilCon has historically acted as a bill payer for other efforts within the department, and that the services have extensive unmet needs. And as I noted earlier, deferred MilCon has contributed to service members living in dilapidated barracks, training in insufficient facilities, and working in deficient spaces for their missions. I want to note a few concerns. First of all, I note with concern that the White House has decided to circumvent the budget process and push $900 million of MilCon funding into the partisan reconciliation measure. And let me be clear, MilCon in a reconciliation bill is not MilCon appropriations, it's a slush fund. The nature of reconciliation is such that neither this subcommittee nor the whole Senate will have control or meaningful oversight of those funds. And it's my belief that if Congress makes the mistake of accommodating this request to fund military construction via reconciliation rather than through the appropriations process. We bow to executive overreach, degrade our own constitutional authority, and drastically diminish our ability to oversee the use of these funds. I am concerned that the administration intends to use those funds, $900 million of military construction, through the reconciliation process, not to upgrade defense facilities at home and abroad, but instead to build a migrant detention complex across Department of Defense facilities nationwide and around the world, and in so doing, divert the department's mission from fighting and winning wars to domestic immigration enforcement. Our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians are warfighters, not jailers of migrants. I look forward to engaging with the administration, Mr. Marks, to get greater clarity on the intended purposes of those $900 million. Because if the administration does intend to fund the construction of migrant detention facilities at military bases using military construction funds, it should include those specific plans in its budget request. At minimum, the administration must provide this subcommittee with a detailed accounting of how it intends to use the $900 million requested for military construction in reconciliation. A few additional concerns I'd like to note. First of all, the use and invocation of emergency authorities to justify reprogramming of military construction dollars. There is a place for the use of emergency authorities to support reprogramming. If it becomes a habit, it can circumvent the appropriations process. I'll also note concern that there is a substantial defunding of family housing accounts for the Army and the Navy, including for programs that provide essential maintenance of and oversight of privatized family housing. And I think we all know that privatized family housing at DoD installations is a mess. I've spent years investigating it, heard testimony from folks like Captain Samuel Cho in Georgia, who experienced firsthand the effects on his daughter's health of mold and contamination in privatized family housing at Fort Gordon. His 8-year-old daughter, as he testified before the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations here in the Senate, developed a rash so severe that, as Captain Cho testified, quote, her skin became hardened and rough and reptilian in nature, and when she would scratch it, it would bleed profusely. This was the 8-year-old daughter of a U.S. Army captain who, because of the poor condition of housing in this Balfour Beatty Homes development at Fort Gordon, was bleeding when she scratched her own skin. So I'm concerned that the reduction in funds for these family housing programs could reduce our ability to hold those contractors to a high standard and to look out for those personnel and their families. I echo the chairman in noting that we have yet to receive the budget justifications required for us to do our jobs with all the information that is necessary. We still do not have the unfunded priorities lists that will allow members of Congress to highlight projects critical to their home states that may have been left out of the request. Mr. Chairman, I'm looking forward to working with you on those issues and throughout this process. I want to thank again the witnesses here for your service to the nation and for being here to brief us and to answer members' questions. I think this subcommittee is known for rising above the fray and working in a constructive, civil, and bipartisan manner. It's simply too important for us not to do that. I thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Very good. Assistant Secretary Marks, you're recognized.
Thank you. Chairman Boozman, Ranking Member Ossoff, and distinguished members of this subcommittee, as the newly confirmed on day 7 Assistant Secretary of Defense for Energy, Installations, and Environment, I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the President's proposed fiscal year 2026 budget for the Department of Defense Energy, Installations, and Environment portfolio. The President and Secretary of Defense have laid out a clear objective for the Department: achieve peace through strength. As the Secretary has said, the threats we face are serious. Our investments to counter them must also be, and that's what this budget does. I firmly believe that the strength and lethality of our military is built both on the weapon systems that defend us and on the readiness of our service members and their families to accomplish this mission. And make no mistake, our installations are weapon systems, just like our ships, tanks, and planes. We must ensure that they are postured in terms of quality, condition, and laydown to carry out the entire spectrum of military operations. But at the same time, we know that America is a target. Our installations are under threat, not just from our adversaries, but from aging infrastructure, extreme weather, and increasingly complex operational demands. To address these challenges, we're focusing on an installation resilience approach that focuses squarely on military readiness and operational capability. This ensures our resources directly support what matters most, maintaining ready forces and resilient installations that can operate effectively under any conditions. In particular, we are focusing on infrastructure modernization and energy resilience, operational energy security, and investing in our innovation and research programs. At the same time, we recognize the resilience of our installations is enhanced by partnering with our defense communities, and we're making a concerted effort to work with them on mutually beneficial initiatives that enhance resilience and prevent risks to national security. We also recognize that our service members' readiness starts at home. We want to ensure our warfighters are able to deliver 100% of their effort to their missions without having to worry about issues with their housing or the health and safety of their family members back home. The Department remains committed to ensuring that the DoD's housing portfolio meets appropriate life, health, and safety requirements and provides a positive living experience for military personnel and their families, and we're continuing to address risks to human health and the environment through our environmental cleanup programs. To accomplish these goals, the Department must ensure that we make the most efficient use of our resources and manpower, and as such, the Secretary of Defense issued a clear directive to focus on eliminating waste and duplication to enable the Department to focus on its core mission of defending the nation. EI&E is coordinating several efforts to review current processes and regulations to create efficiencies, reduce costs, including a review of our MILCON and FSRM investment portfolios, real property efficiencies, and review our implementation of environmental laws and regulations. And finally, as part of this administration's efforts to counter China's malign actions, we continue to work with key stakeholders across DoD's use of lands and natural resources in Hawaii through the Hawaii Coordination Cell. Going forward, we have some big issues to tackle, such as meeting Congress's directive to significantly increase our SRM investments to at least 4% of plant replacement value, and I look forward to working with the committee to address these challenges head-on and fulfill our commitment to our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. General Wilson.
Chairman Bozeman, Ranking Member Ossoff, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for allowing me to appear before you today. Our installations are the bedrock of Army readiness, lethality, and warfighting capability. They're where our soldiers train, live, work, and prepare to defend our nations. My testimony today highlights the Army's unwavering commitment to transforming our installations into agile and adaptable platforms that can meet the evolving missions and counter emerging threats, from cyber attacks to natural disasters. Our investments in the right locations and facilities guarantees that our warfighters will have the operational and support infrastructure they need to succeed in their mission. Our facility investment plan prioritizes military construction and infrastructure projects based on the direct input from the commanders in the field and a careful assessment of the strategic needs. In FY24, we awarded significant funding for MILCON projects, and we are allocating more in FY25, representing an increase in investment and a commitment to improving our infrastructure. Beyond MILCON, we're investing heavily in facility sustainment, restoration, and modernization, or FSRM, in the future. And we appreciate Congress recognizing the vital need by establishing the minimum FRSM requirements and the 2025 NDAA, and we look forward to continuing our collaboration. Taking care of our soldiers and their families remains our #1 priority, and their well-being is directly linked to the readiness and the ability of the Army to accomplish its mission. We're also deeply focused on improving the quality of Army family housing, both government-owned and privatized. Tenant satisfaction is improving. However, we recognize that there is always more work to be done. We're also actively exploring innovative energy solutions, including tactical microgrids and the potential for nuclear energy on our installations. The Army continues to leverage public-private partnerships to drive broader innovation and reduce our reliance on traditional funding sources. For example, we are actively using energy-saving performance contracts, utility energy-saving contracts, and intergovernmental support agreements to improve our installations' efficiency, lower operational costs, and promote sustainability. Predictable resourcing is an absolute essential to modernize our Army installations, maintain our warfighting edge, and ensure the safety and well-being of our soldiers, their families, and our defense communities. Thank you for your continued support and your commitment to our military and the dedication to ensuring that the readiness of our Army is first and foremost at the forefront. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Admiral Jablon.
Chairman Bozeman, Ranking Member Ossoff, distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. I'm looking forward to discussing the critical role of our installations and infrastructure that they play in effectively developing, generating, employing, and sustaining the Navy and Joint Force. It is an honor to appear before you today and a privilege to speak on behalf of the sailors and Navy civilians stationed at our 70 installations around the world. The Navy's total MILCON and FSRM requirements far exceeds the funds available. But with strong congressional support, we are focusing our infrastructure investments to maximize operational readiness and to improve the quality of life for our personnel and their families. Your trust, confidence, and commitment are vital to ensuring the Navy's continued capability to maintain the peace, respond to crisis, and support critical Navy and Joint Force requirements to win decisively in war. The Secretary of Defense recently issued interim National Defense Strategic Guidance, which directs Department of Defense activities to restore peace through strength. The Navy Logistics Enterprise, which includes our installations and infrastructure, is focused on carrying out the tenets of this strategic guidance through the implementation of the Navy's Maritime Sustainment Strategy. Navy understands that readiness starts from the shore, and effective infrastructure is a cornerstone of our maritime sustainment strategy to not only support the quality of life for our sailors, but also sustain operations of the Navy and Joint Force around the globe. We are focusing our efforts to prioritize and program resources to repair, modernize, and replace critical infrastructure directly supporting operational readiness in the Indo-Pacific. For example, the $2.2 billion Congress provided in the fiscal year 25 disaster supplemental provides critical resources for Typhoon Mawar recovery efforts in Guam to include repairs to Opera Harbor glass breakwater, HSC 25 hangar MILCON, and hardening of our critical electrical feeders to the Navy base. And with congressional support, continued investment in our infrastructure will maintain our progress toward a modern, resilient, and ready network of installations that ensure fleet readiness, combat logistics capability across peacetime, competition, and contested environments to support both the Navy and Joint Force lethality. Thank you, and I look forward to our discussion today.
Thank you, General Skalenka.
Chairman Bozeman and Ranking Member Ossoff and the distinguished members of the subcommittee, I really appreciate the opportunity to testify today regarding your Marine Corps' military construction and the quality of life initiatives that we have. On behalf of the Commandant, also, I want to make a special thanks to all of you for your continued support to all of our Marines, the active duty, the reserve component, civilian, retired, and of course to our families. Now, the infrastructure and MILCON challenges confronting the Marine Corps today, these are decades in the making, and there are no quick fix solutions. As repeatedly documented by the Government Accountability Office, our deferred maintenance and our MILCON needs, they're significant, and they go beyond our ability to self-fund. The year-long continuing resolution has exacerbated these challenges. But what I'm not going to do today is I'm not going to state that the only solution to these issues is more money and greater resourcing. As we previously testified, and as has been noted by the GAO, additional funding is indeed required, but so is leadership. And to that end, the Commandant, his directive to us has been clear. It's a commitment to our Marines and their families, young people from your respective states. That commitment's unwavering. They are what we value the most, and that's why we will continue to accelerate the delivery of our Barracks 2030 project, as well as aggressively implement our force design and Marine Corps modernization. Now, regarding our bases and stations, the Commandant and I have long expressed the point that these are no longer administrative garrison sanctuaries. I think we should expect that the opening salvo in any conflict with a peer adversary, it's going to be aimed at our infrastructure. And our installations here in the homeland will not be exempt from such attacks. In fact, I think the case can easily be made that the first shots are already being fired. fired in the form of cyber attacks, UAS incursions, campaigns of subversion as well as disruption. Against a peer adversary, we're going to find ourselves not only fighting from our bases and installations, but in several cases, we'll likely find ourselves fighting for those very bases and installations. Now, with strong support from Congress, we're making progress. But this is going to it's going to require sustained effort over a sustained period. No one budget year is going to provide enough resources to overcome our existing challenges or to eliminate the threats to our installations. However, the Marine Corps, as we always have, will continue to make every dollar count and maximize the return on investment for the American people and the Marines that they've entrusted us to lead. Now, we remain extremely grateful to the subcommittee for your partnership and your leadership, and together we're going to ensure that our installations are as resilient and as ready as the Marines that they support. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, and General Miller.
Good morning, Chair Bozeman and Ranking Member Ossoff and distinguished members of the subcommittee. I'm honored to appear today to discuss the fiscal year 2026 Air Force Military Construction Program. I'd like to begin by thanking the subcommittee for your steadfast support of our nation's Air Force and the military construction funding that you've provided. Multiple projects, including an air traffic control tower, a child care development center, and multiple military construction projects benefited from the $160 million in additional appropriations provided by Congress beyond the FY25 President's budget. Importantly, $487 million that Congress provided for the FY25 Disaster Relief Supplemental provides much-needed resources to support Andersen Air Force Base's recovery from the devastation of Typhoon Marwar. Our nation continues to face a nexus of complex challenges: defending the homeland, deterring a pacing threat of China in the Indo-Pacific, the increasing complexity of multi-domain threats, and the competition for resources, and the increasing rate of technological change. The People's Liberation Army continues expanding, modernizing, diversifying its entire military, including its air, space, cyber, and nuclear forces. In the face of these challenges, this year's FY26 budget reflects ongoing modernization efforts, including revolutionizing global strike capabilities built around the Sentinel and the B-21 Raider. Sentinel is the largest, most complex weapon system acquisition program the Air Force has ever undertaken. We're working with the Office of the Secretary of Defense in seeking opportunities to reduce costs while revising the program's Milestone B recertification. MILCON for Sentinel support facilities at Vandenberg Space Force Base and Hill, F.E. Warren, and Malmstrom Air Force Bases continue as the program restructures. The budget request includes funding for utility corridors and design for launch and control facilities. Support to the B-21 program across Ellsworth, Dyess, Whiteman Air Force Bases is also included in this year's submission. Without question, our airmen are the foundation of the Air Force. This request preserves the well-being and quality of life for service members and their families through investment in much-needed housing and child care development centers. Generous congressional support in fiscal years 22 through 25 funded most of our CDC projects that were currently at executable design stage. The Air Force is actively working on design of 15 additional CDC projects totaling $492 million for inclusion in future budget submissions. Additionally, in FY26, the Air Force Military Family Housing Construction Program focuses on planning studies, designs for future construction, and 2 projects improving housing in Japan, one at Yokota and one at Kadena Air Base. In closing, the Air Force's strong partnership with this subcommittee's members, the dedicated staff, that are both essential to the modernization of our assets, the safety of our installations, and the welfare of our airmen and our families. I look forward to continuing to support and to this hearing today. Thank you.
Thank you, General Warkomski.
Chairman Bozeman, Ranking Member Ossoff, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the U.S. Space Force for our military construction program. The Space Force remains laser-focused on securing our nation's interest in, from, and to space. And as access to space grows, the strategic landscape is becoming increasingly complex. Many of our systems were fielded in an uncontested environment, and today our adversaries are aggressively fielding capabilities to contest and ultimately control space, fundamentally shifting it into a warfighting domain. They are also posturing to challenge our critical infrastructure both at home and abroad. Meanwhile, our installations serve as home to our guardians, airmen, mission partners, and their families who live and work there. The preponderance of our combat-ready guardians are employed in place at their home stations, executing their missions from our installations, which serve as power projection platforms. The vital importance of our facilities and infrastructure cannot be overstated. It is foundational to the launch and operational missions we conduct across the entire spectrum of conflict to provide essential capabilities to the Joint Force. Military construction funding for the Space Force provides flexibility balancing infrastructure requirements across our weapon systems, quality of life, and force support portfolios. FSRM priorities include essential upgrades to power, electrical, and water systems, heating and cooling, fire suppression, roofs, and dormitories. MILCON priorities focus on increasing capacity and reducing risk to mission with an emphasis on mission bed down, security improvements, and assured access to space. The Spaceport of the Future initiative, encompassing our East and West Coast launch complexes, remains the foundation of our assured access to space and is instrumental in enhancing our national security space launch capabilities. We continue to diversify launch providers, increase launch sites, and invest in range facilities and increase payload processing capacity, all while closely monitoring the launch supply chain. We want to thank Congress for the $109.8 million in MILCON, $444.5 million in FSRM, and the $84.9 million in planning and design the Space Force received in FY25. This includes $63 million in planning and design for Spaceport of the Future to keep our launch enterprise globally competitive. Thanks again for your continued advocacy for Space Force MILCON, as well as the quality of life initiatives supporting our guardians, airmen, and their families. I look forward to our dialogue.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony. We'll get started with our questions. I had the opportunity to go to the Army Museum over the weekend. I saw a little blurb on one of the morning shows about the new exhibit there, and it's in the Army Museum, but it really is about the fighting patriots that really, were so stepped forward at the time of crisis as our country was beginning. But I'd really recommend that all of you go and see it. It's outstanding. Again, it's in the Army Museum, but it's really not an Army museum in the Army exhibit, in the sense that that same spirit is what embodies you all, the people that have served since then, that have done such a tremendous job of keeping us safe, keeping us free, the sacrifices of you in uniform and your families. It certainly is a family affair. And we're going to be talking about housing, all of the things that we can do to keep, families together, that aspect of things. So let's start out with Mr. Marks. Mr. Marks, given the ongoing legal uncertainty surrounding project labor agreements, how is the department managing the day-to-day impact on projects in the pipeline, especially those approaching award, that are now stalled due to uncertainty over whether a PLA is required or not? Has any guidance been given to avoid delays or compliance issues in the interim? And finally, how will this impact the projects in this year's request if it's determined that PLAs are required?
Senator, first, thank you for that question, and I do appreciate—
Lots of questions.
Yes, Senator. But I do appreciate the time that we did have to begin to discuss this. First and foremost, as I shared with you, anything that increases cost and schedule is of a concern to the department right now. And so we're working very, very hard to look at that. The administration supports the use of project labor agreements where those are practicable and cost effective. But I, again, want to emphasize that I affirm and recognize your concerns about the costs and the drivers that could potentially cause those projects to increase. Right now, we're not going to be pursuing any blanket deviations, but we are working with NAVFAC and USACE to go project by project and ensure that we are finding the most economical and speedy way to continue to move these projects along so that we can assess those on a project by project basis. We're also working with OMB to determine our next steps and how we best address this issue for the long term, given the nature of where we stand today. And so the impact of that, as we spoke earlier, is all about mission and readiness and how do we drive that forward. And so much of the directions that we've given in working with these esteemed colleagues to my left is really to continue to drive those as quickly as we possibly can to meet the readiness concerns we have and to keep the costs down as best as we possibly can.
Very good, thank you. The Deputy Secretary of Defense directed a review of the MILCON portfolio to identify opportunities for greater efficiency. As you know, initiatives like this often take time. While the review isn't complete, I'd like to hear from the panel, are there any early findings or promising areas that could be acted on quickly? Since you're already in the midst of building the fiscal year 2027 budget, is there any realistic expectation that these efficiencies will be reflected in that submission, or are we likely looking at a longer timeline before we see tangible changes?
Senator, let me lead with that just in a broad sense, and then I'll defer to my colleagues. But as we were working on those, some of the early things that we are examining continue to be the use of other transactional authorities where it makes sense to move quickly. More importantly, we're taking a page from our partners at Defense Innovation Unit with an accelerated design build, ways to bring contractors together more quickly, get through this changing requirements idea so that we can get it done quickly, move it ahead quickly. The idea of also building projects, bundling multiple projects together where that makes sense, so that we can, again, move things together quickly. And then finally, the idea behind replacing failed or failing facilities, so the repair by replace work that we've done collectively, to more efficiently replace those using O&M dollars. Again, all of those are things that we want to share collectively and make sure that we're doing those in a way that moves us ahead transparently to meet the mission requirements.
Anyone else?
Senator, as you said, the MILCON cost is really astronomical and really getting out of hand. So what our objective is to think, act, and operate differently in the Navy for possible alternative construction methods, modular construction, using tension fabric structures instead of regular brick and mortar. That will buy us some efficiencies both in cost and time. Also, Honorable Marks mentioned about block buy of specific types of buildings that we do repetitively, such as CDCs and barracks, could bring the cost down.
Very good. Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Miller, thank you again for being here. Thank you for our conversation yesterday as well. I think you're aware last August I had the pleasure of hosting Air Force Chief of Staff General Alvin in Georgia. We visited several installations, including Moody Air Force Base in Valdosta. And man, are the people of Valdosta proud of and supportive of Moody. Mayor Matheson, Dr. Lucy Green of Moody Support Group, I mean, that is a base community that just loves hosting the Air Force and provides so much support for the airmen and the civilians who work on and around the base. And they are thrilled that Moody has been selected to host the F-35 with the A-10s leaving the force. And critical infrastructure upgrades are already underway to prepare the installation for that transition. You and I discussed this yesterday, and here in this public setting, I'd like your commitment again that you will work closely with me, with the subcommittee, with the community in Valdosta to ensure that the base is prepared and successful to swiftly bring those aircraft to Georgia.
Senator Ossoff, Ranking Member Ossoff, thank you for the call yesterday, taking the time. Absolutely, Moody has so much combat capability for the United States Air Force in one place, from the rescue squadron to the base defense group to the fighters there, A-10s now, F-35s in the future. I do commit to you to work. It's a multifaceted question. You asked, how do we pull to the left? And so pulling to the left is, looking at the environmental requirements, the facility requirements that you just mentioned, the aircraft laydown, all the combat capability, and most familiar with Robbins and Valdosta's support to the Air Force communities, and can't thank Georgia enough for that.
Thank you. Looking forward to working with you on that. And I do want to discuss Robbins And again, you and I discussed this yesterday, but I want to raise here in this public setting once again with you the condition of the air logistics complex. I mean, you know how extraordinary the work being done at Robins is in terms of all of the maintenance and not just on the airframes, but also the avionics and so many of the systems. But that air logistics complex really needs more investment. The condition of the facilities, degradation, neglect, faulty construction, it's a disservice to the airmen and civilians who are there, making sure that the Air Force has aircraft, avionics, systems that are in the state they need to be in. So I'm asking you here for your commitment to work with me and the subcommittee and the leadership at Robins to accelerate investment in key projects at Robins that may include FSRM funding and to upgrade facilities at the air logistics complex.
Yes, sir. And in the public forum, I do want to just applaud Warner Robins Air Logistics Complex has turned around vexing problems we've had with weapon systems F-15, C-5, C-130 in all aspects, meeting on-time delivery and providing more flight line availability for those weapon systems in wings throughout the Air Force. And you remarked avionics in particular is a particular skill set that the complex there produces for many weapon systems that I didn't just mention, and you do have my commitment that looking at not only the workload that's there now at Warner Robins, that what's in the future also coming to Warner Robins, that the facilities, the infrastructure, the overhead cranes, the power, all the ability in the classified environment also for the avionics, as mentioned, will be addressed and planned for in advance and not late to need.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to working with you, General. And Admiral Jablon, thank you as well for your service and your testimony today. Georgia is proud to host Naval Submarine Base Kings Bay. We are proud to host the East Coast home for the Ohio-class submarines. We are working closely with the Navy and with the Department in order to prepare for the transition to the Columbia-class boats. It is one of my top priorities to make sure that we're investing in Kings Bay to prepare it for the equipment and the missions that are coming. Can I have your commitment, Admiral, to work with me and the subcommittee and the leadership at Kings Bay and local leaders in Georgia to ensure that the base is fully prepared to accept the new Columbia-class submarines?
Senator, thank you for that question. As a former Submarine Group 10 commander in Kings Bay, you do have my commitment to work with you and the subcommittee. As you know, the Columbia-class submarine is our #1 priority in the Navy, and the infrastructure which supports that is vital to its success.
Thank you, Admiral. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Hyde-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member, and thank you for being on the panel today and your willingness to serve. And I just appreciate everybody here in uniform and that's not in uniform for your commitments. I just want to get that out there. And I really appreciate the fact that in your FY25 budget, you included the Keesler Air Force Base tower. That is so important for that air traffic control tower there. And it's certainly part of our national defense, but we're very proud of it and appreciate that. And this is for those who want to answer that concern of mine, is how is the department ensuring that smaller but strategically essential installations such as those in Mississippi are not overlooked when it comes to long-term planning for necessary infrastructure upgrades and resource prioritization?
Senator, thank you, and good morning. First and foremost is, as I've mentioned before in previous testimony, the understanding that combatant commanders and the laydown and the needs. So as we think about things like Golden Dome, when we think about the defense of our installations, counter small UAS, other things, is the importance of our installations, again, not only as force projection platforms, but as war-fighting places themselves. And so as we take that, the department's taking a comprehensive look at all of our locations to ensure that we are in the right locations at the right time, and making sure that we're making the proper investments to meet those there. And I know each of the services has their own determination of how that is important, but I assure you that we are taking that seriously as we look across the entire portfolio of our installations and their importance to what the future defense of our national security.
Thank you for that. And I'll go back to you. The prior administration was very slow in evaluating, processing, and reporting to this committee the required projects, restructurings under the military housing privatization initiative, particularly those caused by shortfalls in the long-term reinvestment accounts for those projects. What is your team doing to expedite these evaluations and reports to this committee and OMB so that our service members can benefit from the much-needed improvements these restructurings will provide for them?
Senator, thank you for that. And as a past resident of military housing, I assure you that I appreciate greatly what you are discussing here today. We are doing right now is to take a hard look at that, working with my service partners to ensure that the investments that are being made are there. The care of our families is of utmost, not only for their own readiness, but their health, life, and safety as well, as you know. And so I wanted to make sure that we take a harder look at that, again, early into the job and diving deeper with each of the services to look at that. But I share your concerns and will continue to share with this committee what we learn and how we make improvements to the portfolio.
That's very much appreciated, and I have no further questions.
Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In January, General Wilson, where is General Wilson? General Wilson. In January of this year, I wrote a letter advocating for the inclusion of a new 42nd Infantry Division headquarters on the Army's fiscal year 26 unfunded priority list. Funding this project will secure an overdue upgrade to the 42nd Infantry Division headquarters in Troy, New York, and help facilitate the planned construction of an $800 million cannon factory at the nearby Watervliet Armory. I would like you to speak to the significance of both projects. What can you tell this committee about the impact of the new headquarters for the 42nd Infantry Division and the importance of continuing the expansion of the Watervliet Armory?
Yes, Senator. On the Watervliet Army Depot, Army Materiel Command has prioritized that facility in their facility investment plan, the facility investment plan that's ran annually by the Army Installation Management Command. And so that's accounted for in that space as all of our projects. And we run this facility investment plan annually across with senior commander input, and they determine what prioritization each of their projects in their respective areas will have, and we continue to support those commanders on the ground priorities from the Department of the Army staff level.
Thank you. General Miller, I'd like to discuss infrastructure projects in Niagara Falls Air Reserve Station. I'm requesting funding to construct a combined operations airfield facility to further support the work done by the 914th Operations Group and subordinate units. It's my understanding that although this project is not in the President's budget request, it is a strong candidate for the unfunded priority list. Can you speak to the benefits of a modernization and properly sized combined operation airfield facility, particularly at the location like Niagara Falls, which is certified nuclear ready and supports the worldwide combat air refueling mission?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. The combined ops, having a combined mission set in one facility has very qualitative improvement for the mission. When people work together and they can team together, especially and a responsibility like you just described that Niagara Falls has and other responsibilities that could go there, having a team that works at a facility that they can be proud of, that'll be able to last for mission upon mission that comes down, not just playing a short game for the mission, but a long game, has a huge impact. And we're a retention force, as you know. So when we bring an airman into whichever component within the Air Force, Guard, Reserve, or active duty, we want to keep them. We're investing in them. It's a high-tech service. And so they're making a decision on whether they're staying based on the facilities they get to work in, the care that we put into where they work, where they live. Absolutely important.
Well, thank you, General Miller. General Wilson, it's my understanding that the new runway lighting infrastructure is needed to improve aircraft safety during takeoff and landing at Wheeler-Sac Army Airfield located at Fort Drum. Considering the recent frequency of airfield incidents, including the tragic collision at GCA in January, can you speak to the importance of this project as well as other infrastructure projects that may be necessary to improve air traffic safety?
Yes, Senator. In fact, the Army supports this and supports the move from FY '27 to '26 for this project timeline
Yep.
move out. And that was just signed on yesterday.
Great, thank you. Last question, General Miller. With the continuing proliferation of small unmanned aerial systems, including the strategic success of Ukraine's Operation Spider's Web and Israel's recent drone operation staged from within Iranian territory, I'm wondering what additional passive infrastructure defenses the Air Force may be considering to protect aircraft on the flight line, including construction of hardened aircraft shelters.
Thank you, Senator. We've been thinking about this long before the dramatic events that everyone saw on television. I think it's a multifaceted problem with a multifaceted approach. Facilities absolutely has a play there, but also electromagnetic spectrum. How do you directed energy? The authorities to, especially within the United States, coordination with the FAA, coordination to prosecute, whether it's FBI that is going left of launch of counter Suez. So facilities and infrastructure and hardening does have a play, but it's a multifaceted play. We don't want to spend years and years only going after the facility piece, only to learn that there's a different threat that we're seeing in the rearview mirror.
And when can we expect a plan or proposal with regard to UAS?
I actually work very closely with our Director of Operations, who's the lead for the Air Force, because it is all the things I just mentioned, which I know we're short on time, but I will get back with the A3 as the lead for the Air Force on it, and we'll get back with your office, or if you have time, with you.
Anytime. Thank you. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member.
Admiral Jablon and General Miller, the Navy and Air Force sustained major infrastructure damage on Guam due to Typhoon Mawar. While Congress provided an initial down payment to the disaster relief supplemental, significant unfunded recovery remains. There appears to be little, if any, disaster recovery funding in this year's budget request. What actions are the Navy and Air Force currently taking to address the damaged infrastructure on Guam? And what is your plan to request and secure the additional funding required for full recovery?
Senator, thank you for that question. As I mentioned in my opening statement, really thankful for Congress's supplemental $2.2 billion, focusing that investment specifically on FSRM investments to get after the Typhoon Mawar effects that destroyed many facilities. The backlog of infrastructure to correct from Mawar is about $40 billion right now. So we are looking at those most critical infrastructure assets, hardening our electrical utilities, going after electrical utilities within the Navy base at Polaris Point to focus FSRM and MILCON dollars on that. But we're working as diligently as we can in a prioritized way to get after Mawar recovery efforts.
And Chair Bozeman, if I could add, from the punishing environment, as you know, of Guam, humidity, wind, it has a degrading effect on equipment. We've had a lot of pre-positioned equipment that we had pre-positioned at Anderson, and this is prior to the typhoon, where we didn't have adequate facilities to shelter from the weather. That was only accelerated through when the typhoon hit. So we had degrading Spalding concrete and uncovered equipment that just accelerated after the typhoon. We have taken the funds that have already been provided by Congress and doing warehousing to get equipment out of the weather. We have $109 million in two projects, which will award in August and September, to address two dorms that we need to renovate, 2 out of 4 that we're looking at. But to get to your question very directly, we would be decades trying to absorb the requirements that we have within the base budget of the service. If it's $8 billion is the current estimate for the Air Force, which is more than twice as much as we have in MILCON for any 1 year for current mission MILCON and new mission MILCON.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for your service. I want to begin my questions to you, General Miller. You're nodding like you're expecting this, so yes, I have an excellent team. Thank you very much. I want to talk about the JITC. This is the Joint Integrated Testing and Training Center at JBER, one of the Air Force's top priorities for MILCON. In the FY26-1 files that the committee received last week, the Air Force increases that request to $152 million in FY26 authorizations. Can you share with the committee how we jumped? This was always a significant project. It was big, even in Air Force terms, but increasing from $97 million to $152 million, and also whether or not we should expect any delays or other consequences in the project based on the late addition to the scope of the project.
Yes, Senator, thank you. The JITC, the importance of the JITC can, I don't have the words to describe how important it is to the Joint Force, to the air domain. So you know the mission analysis behind that. In the analysis as we were going forward, the power requirements, because of that unique capability that the JITC brings, drove an additional substation that was required, so $105 million additional dollars. That was the majority of the escalation. Is the power requirements are so dramatically larger for what the mission of the JITC will be. That was the escalation.
So can you share then, because you know the situation in Cook Inlet with the natural gas supplies dwindling, how is the Air Force working to secure long-term energy needs for not only JBER there, but really for the bases more broadly in Alaska?
So, Senator, I'm sure you're aware of the recent announcement for the microreactor at
Yes,
Eielson.
finally, we're pleased to see that.
Yes, ma'am. And that's really, I think, that's an indicator for the future for us, not only for a location that's so reliant on a source of reliable, that's repetitive, energy to have it there, but from a resiliency standpoint, from being able to island off of the grid. It was mentioned earlier in testimony that absolutely attacking our SCADA systems at the beginning of an attack from a cyber perspective is an easy take for an adversary. So if we have mission systems that are relying on a commercial electrical grid and thinking about the impact that would, the energy independence that it would give us to be able to island from an energy perspective on installations with critical missions throughout the United States and deployed. And I think the encouraging piece there is it's a 5 megawatt reactor, but to build, if there's additional requirements, to build additional. We're looking forward to that and seeing.
What's it going to do to your timeline? Are you worried about that? That it pushes out the timeline for the JITC to be fully stood up?
Time is not on our side on any piece of this, so I'll have to get back with your team on the specifics of the timeline. I'm not aware. I was aware of the dollar escalation from a time perspective. I think once they came to the conclusion of there's just no way to meet it with the current power requirements, they took that into the planning. I'll have to take that for the record to get you the details of the time.
Well, I would appreciate that. Let me turn now to you, Mr. Marks. Also, sticking with the energy vulnerability, we know the situation in Alaska, again, a great reliance on natural gas out of the Cook Inlet, and up in the interior there, specifically at Fort Wainwright, the concern about Wainwright being vulnerable to unexpected outages and operational issues. Wondering whether the budget request reflects appropriate funding levels to address energy reliability challenges like we have at Wainwright. And then I'm going to throw an extra question in here, and this is related to dual-use infrastructure. I have been pushing much more aggressively on what we can be doing within particularly the Alaska environment to move towards opportunities to construct projects that are able to serve multiple departments and agencies. I'm concerned about energy, and I want to focus on dual-use infrastructure.
Senator, thank you for that. First, being sensitive to time, I know the first one, installation energy resiliency plans are certainly part of what has been put into the program, and so I'll be happy to come back to you and we can discuss that one further.
Great.
Alternatively, on dual use, I agree with you. Partnerships and industry best practices are things that we need to continue to pursue, and so also that's something that we can share together, and I'll be happy to come back and meet with you on that.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have many questions that I'll submit for the record, but I appreciate the individuals being here today.
Thank you. Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, and thank you to all of our witnesses. Thank you for your service. I want to start with you, General Wilson. I understand the Army Reserve is facing a multi-billion-dollar backlog in deferred facilities restoration and maintenance, and I'm concerned about the impact this backlog has on readiness for not just the reserve, but also the active component, given the critical sustainment and logistics capabilities that reside within the Army Reserve. Fort McCoy in Wisconsin is a key installation for reserve component training and large-scale mobilization. For the Army G9 perspective, how are military construction investments at Fort McCoy, as well as those for individual reserve units in Wisconsin, being prioritized to support their long-term strategic value?
Thank you, Senator. All of those requirements are prioritized by that component, the Army Reserve, Compo 3. And so what comes in as part of the facilities investment plan for the Compo 3, it's their assessment based on the status of their facilities and infrastructure. And with, like Fort McCoy, which is a serious mobilization station and site for the Army, I could tell you that they're giving it the right level of attention and ensuring that's accounted for in the facilities investment plan moving forward.
Okay, thank you, General Wilson. Secretary Marks, I worked with this committee to secure funding for a new community noise mitigation program implemented by the Office of Local Community Defense Cooperation. I was disappointed by the long delay in making the first round of funding available to local governments. And I want to make sure that you're aware that communities such as Dane County in Wisconsin have been waiting for this funding for years. The 115th Fighter Wing began receiving F-35 aircraft in 2023, and the neighboring residents are still waiting for federal assistance in addressing noise impacts. So, Assistant Secretary Marks, will you work to ensure this funding competition moves forward without delay?
Senator, absolutely. And first, let me thank you for your leadership on that. As someone who just left an F-35 training base with more than 50 F-35s, I understand the source of your concern at Truex, so thank you for that. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. And in fact, what I would like to do is come back to you and sit down with you and explain the competitive process and ways that I think we can bolster the case to make sure that that does move forward without delay. And so I'd be happy to come back and do that with my team if that would be acceptable. And to you, the second round of competition is ongoing right now, and so we certainly want to make sure that we put all of the effort behind that. And I acknowledge that, and we'd be happy to schedule that with your team.
Yeah, it closes out shortly in early July, and
That's
I know
correct.
that my community is working very hard on their submission for that, and I would welcome a follow-up with your team to
Yes,
talk
ma'am.
in more granular detail.
Be happy to do that, ma'am.
Mr. Secretary, this committee has also long been concerned about the backlog of cleanup efforts at current and former defense installations. The most recent publicly available information from the Defense Environmental Restoration Program on the status of planned remediation is from fiscal year 2023. That information lists an intent to devote over $1 million to cleanup activities Wisconsin in Wisconsin in fiscal year 2025. I know I speak for many on this committee when I express my dissatisfaction with the full year continuing resolution that passed in March. But my question for you, Mr. Secretary, is what is the status of this fiscal year 2025 funding that was planned for locations in Wisconsin, including Badger Army Ammunition Plant? And the second question, is the department still on track to devote this funding towards urgently needed cleanup efforts there?
Senator, thank you. We take our environmental responsibilities very seriously, and I do owe you a deeper dive as I'm learning the position right now with my team on each of the cases, and unless General Wilson may have more to this. But I can assure you that we are going to continue to push forward for those things. What I need to make sure that I go back and look at is how that all lays down flat within Wisconsin, which I don't have with me today. I'd be happy to take that for the record and come back to you on that.
I'd appreciate that. Maybe we can do both topics at once.
Absolutely,
as a
ma'am.
follow-up meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
For many years, the Badger Army Ammunition Plant operated, and while it was declared surplus to the Army's and the Department of Defense's needs back in the late 1990s, there's still some remediation that needs to happen there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Senator, from the Army standpoint, we account, there's 27 sites that we're still working toward, and we're committed to the EPA standards for remediation. And the prioritization, of course, most contaminated location is how we're making sure that we step through the list.
Thank you. The senior senator from North Dakota.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Holden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to you and Ranking Member for holding this hearing today. I'd like to thank all of you for your incredible service and as well as all your staff that's here with you. Thanks for your incredible service. We appreciate it and for being here today. General Miller, some gratitude to you for the resurfacing at the Grand Forks Air Force Base runway, or the upgrades, I should say, that runway. Very important. Right now, we're actually hosting, as you know, the B-1 from Ellsworth, as they're making modifications there for the new B-21. And I think we're the logical place to bring it for the Dias B-1s when they have to do the same. So thank you for that, being on top of that. Appreciate it. And that's, by the way, that's going very well, in addition to our ISR mission, hypersonics, satellite, and all the other things we do there at Grand Forks. I want to ask you about Sentinel, though. Very important that we keep Sentinel on track. As you know, because of the Nunn-McCurdy review, we've had a pause. But now, from what I've seen, Air Force is doing some very good things about getting to concurrency in actually installing Sentinel across the 3 ICBM bases and working to get back on track. And we've worked very hard to keep that program funded. And we're doing that again through reconciliation. Talk to me about how you're going to make sure that that gets done concurrently across the 3 bases and on schedule.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. And the concurrently versus serial, you know, and getting there's important work right now, even during the restructuring on Sentinel for utility corridor work, which is vitally important, regardless of the specific restructuring action. The utility corridor work that is being done now, and the planning and design for launch facilities and launch control facilities, all has to be done in advance. I think not knowing what the future brings, there are budgetary requirements in the future. Doing the things we can do right now in the known environment is important, and so that's where we have parts of the Sentinel program have paused under the restructuring, but not the part you just described. So the utility corridor and the planning and design for that launch facility, launch control facility, all can be done and is being done now.
And you're committed to proceeding, as I've just described, and you and I have just discussed.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And then the weapons generation facility at Minot Air Force Base. Right now, the only place that we have air-launched cruise missiles, particularly nuclear air-launched cruise missiles, is Minot, and Minot and Barksdale will be the only places going forward. We need upgrades to that weapon gens facility. Talk to me about how you're going to get that done in a timely way.
There are $44 million in projects that Global Strike's identified specifically to get, that's FSRM, actually, to keep the weapons storage area not only viable, but able to accept LRSO. There's
LRSO, right?
LRSO specifically. There's different requirements over time that are just a function of weather, keeping airmen out of the weather from a security standpoint. But then there's configuration of a specific, and I know we're in an unclassified environment, but configuration and security that have to be addressed, which Global Strike has looked at all those requirements, and I know it has competed extremely well in the prioritization for the FSRM dollars. So they definitely have a strong voice. They definitely have a strong voice within our prioritization within the Air Force.
And your intention is to have those upgrades in place by the time LRSO is ready to go? Because right now, we're not on track for that, but your intention is to be on track for that.
My intention for the configuration piece, absolutely, and I need to go back, loop back on the roads, the roofs, the non-configuration piece. I need to take that one for the record, Senator, and come back to you or your staff with to get that part of the answer.
Thanks, General. General Wilson, for our number one project for our Guard is the 817th Engineering Company in Jamestown. They're actually using the Civic Center. This is a large sapper group engineering company that's been deployed multiple times around the globe, always does an incredible job. They need a new facility. There's $2.5 million in the 25 continuing resolution, but it was not in the 26 budget request. This is a priority. What can you do?
Senator, we will make sure that we circle back with the Guard from the Facilities Investment Plan consolidated list that was approved by them. Of course, that prioritization we're committed to supporting based on the resourcing that becomes available.
Okay, and this next one I know is really important to the chairman of the committee here because he likes to come up to North Dakota and go to Devil's Lake where we have an incredible Army National Guard base, Camp Grafton. And not only does it provide a lot of training, particularly for NCOs, but also it houses the BIA Law Enforcement Training Center, which is the only one we have other than down in Artesia, New Mexico. There is a facility there for lodging, and I know you would want our chairman to be comfortable when he comes up there. And that has been 100% design completed, $8 million spent on the project cost, but he might be coming pretty soon, so we need to make sure we keep that moving. And out of deference to our chairman, can you help me keep that moving?
And the Corps of Engineers does a pretty good job in the oversight.
They do. Again, really appreciate all of you and the work you do. Thank you so much, and again, thanks, Mr. Chairman.
We look forward to staying there. Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Jablon, as you know, Albany, Georgia hosts Marine Corps Logistics Base Albany, which is essential to Marine Corps readiness and sustaining expeditionary combat power for the Marines. I'd like to hear from both Admiral Jablon and General Sklenka on this, please. In FY23, I worked alongside the Marine Corps Logistics Base leadership in the Albany community to help secure planning and design funding for a new consolidated communications facility at the logistics base to more efficiently support the vital Marine Corps logistics mission there. My question for you is, will you work with me to ensure that we move swiftly to construction for this project? Again, we've already funded planning and design. It's the top priority for the facility and the community.
Senator, you absolutely have our commitment. Marine Corps Logistics Base Albany, that is our Marine Corps' sole depot. It is, when you look at first among first in terms of logistics support entities within the Marine Corps, Albany is it. And any way that we can ensure that we deliver capability to our warfighters quickly and effectively, we'll take that.
Anything to add, Admiral?
No, Senator. That depot is under Lieutenant General Slenka's authorities.
Thank you. General Wilson, as you're aware of, Chattahoochee Valley in Georgia, proud home of Fort Benning, the Maneuver Center of Excellence, as well as elements of the 75th Ranger Regiment. And I'm particularly concerned, as I mentioned in my opening statement, about quality of life for service members at Benning and across the country. In FY24, I helped to secure the funding to plan a new elementary school at Fort Benning to replace Dexter Elementary School on Post. Dexter was built in 1968. It is an aged facility that the children of our service members deserve the very best. Again, we have already funded planning and design. Do I have your commitment, General Wilson, to work with me in the subcommittee to try to expedite the construction of that new school for military families at Fort Benning?
Yes, Senator, you do have my commitment.
Thank you, General. I also want to raise with you the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Lab in Forest Park, Georgia, on the Fort Gillem Enclave, which is DOD's only full-service criminal forensic lab. And I've had the pleasure of visiting the facility. It's remarkable what they do, both for traditional criminal forensics, but also for material that's secured and exploited from battlefields around the world. Last year, working alongside Senator Reverend Warnock, we successfully helped extend the authorization needed to complete the construction of a new forensic lab at the Gillem Enclave. Can I have your commitment, General Wilson, to work with me in the subcommittee to ensure that this project has the resources necessary to see it through?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Mr. Marks, I want to touch on the plans for reconciliation and try to get some clarity from the department. There's $900 million of military construction funding requested in the reconciliation measure. What specific projects is that funding for?
Senator, I appreciate that question. And so as we view this as one bill, we're looking at defensive systems, munitions, munitions procurement, readiness, and quality of life programs are all included in that package.
That is many things and important things. My question is what specific projects will be funded by the $900 million allocation requested for the reconciliation measure, as opposed to the remainder of MILCON funding, which the administration wants to move through the normal appropriations process. What is that $900 million for, specifically at the project level?
Senator, let me come back to you at the project level so that I can show you those things. Again, new to that, and I don't have that granularity right now.
Okay, will you please commit to providing the subcommittee with a project-by-project list of which projects are intended to be funded by the $900 million reconciliation portion versus the remainder of the traditional appropriations?
Senator, I'll work with you to try to get the best I can answer to that question, yes.
Well, I appreciate that commitment. Can you think of any reason why, where, as this typically proceeds fiscal year after fiscal year, the subcommittee is provided with a list of projects that constitute the totality of the MILCON budget request, why there would be this nearly $1 billion floating out here that wouldn't have a project-by-project justification?
Senator, I believe it would be there. Again, what we're looking at is the submission of the 26 budget as a standalone, and then the FIDUP will come in 27. So I'll have greater granularity looking into the future, but let me get back to you on that, Senator, and I'll do my utmost to answer that for you.
Okay, so just to be clear, Mr. Marks, you're going to follow up with the subcommittee, and you're going to get us a list of those projects that are intended to be funded via the $900 million reconciliation portion of the overall MILCON budget?
We will attempt to do that, yes, Senator.
We'll attempt to do that, okay. I appreciate that, and Mr. Chairman, that concludes my questions.
Thank you, and I want to thank our witnesses for being with us today, and thank you for your service. And I know we look forward to working closely together to improve the quality of life for our men and women that are in uniform and their families, and then also to give them the resources to keep themselves safe as they keep us safe. For our retiree, General Miller, again, congratulations and thank you for for your dedicated service for so many years. We do appreciate that, and as I said earlier, I know this is a family affair. We greatly appreciate them. For members of the subcommittee, any questions for the record should be turned into subcommittee staff no later than the close of business on Tuesday, June the 24th. The hearing is adjourned.